Hey everybody, welcome to Always Bored, Never Boring. Recently, I was contacted by Jake Weibel, and I hope I'm pronouncing that correctly, from Tektite Games. He has designed and published a real-time strategy game called Tactical Tech, and he wondered if I would take a look at it on my channel. Of course, I said I would be delighted. This is a game for 2 to 4 players, aged 12 and up. It takes around 90 to 120 minutes depending on the number of players and your level of proficiency with the game. And although this has a very slick presentation, it is an indie game, it only has a limited distribution at the moment. You can get it from tektitegames.com, amazon.com, and several game shops in the northwest of the United States. It retails for $49.99. And in this video, I'm going to take a look in the box, I'm going to show you what you get for your money, and we're going to talk through how the game plays, and some of my overall thoughts on the game as a whole. Although, I have to say in advance, I'm not really sure how I feel about this one. It is a very slick design, and it has some really clever ideas. It has an incredibly streamlined rule set which makes it very accessible, and it really does a fantastic job of what it sets out to do, which is to recreate the feel of a real-time strategy computer game. One of those games where you start with a main base, you gather resources, you use those resources to create units to defend your base, to create new structures, to gather additional resources and other benefits, before eventually setting out to crush all of your opponent's bases with the intention of being the last team standing. And if you play that sort of game, I think you're going to be right at home here. It has a very cool futuristic setting where you are mining in the far future, but everybody is fighting over limited resources. You have your main base, and then you have harvesting units that will generate the resources you will use each turn, and then you have some limited military units that will defend you, whilst you gradually expand your mining operations, build defensive turrets, build additional mining units, and purchase upgrades for your buildings and troops. And thematically, I think it's fantastic, and I think, as I mentioned before, it does a really good job of creating that sense of an RTS game. But what makes this really interesting is the fusion of the resource management element of the game with a really clear rule set, and you get these really fabulous player cards that break down every single aspect of the game in such a way that you don't even really need to read the rules. It's so self-explanatory. But then it also layers in this really thoughtful chess-like deterministic combat and movement system. And that for me is where the game loses some of its enjoyment, but I think for other people it will be the real selling point. So first of all, let's take a look in this box. First of all, you get an 8-page rulebook, and even though it is 8 pages, the rules are far less than that. You have a front cover, you have your contents and your list of all of the components you get with the game. You have an overview of all the components, descriptions of the various different cards and the various different items that you'll be using in the game in detail. A page on how to actually set up the game. There are some different board layouts here. I really wish these diagrams were larger. They are very difficult to see, and I do think that when you first start playing the game, you should use the layouts in the rulebook. There is a very real chance that if you randomly lay out the tiles at the start of the game, you won't have the best experience because the map will be very difficult to traverse. You will find there are little pockets where people can easily build up their defenses. There will be areas that are really difficult to get to, and the game will stretch out and become less fun. I think you really do need to use either one of these layouts here, or very carefully think out a layout for yourself. Don't just randomly throw the tiles down. And then finally, on the next page, we get to starting the match. You have your rules covering 1, 2, 3 pages. And then there's some tutorial stuff at the end. So really, it's only 2.5 pages of rules. It's very streamlined, very economical in its design. Yet it manages to pack a lot of game in there. Next up, you get 4 of these player turn boards. And these are on really thick card. They're double-sided, and these are brilliant. These are so well designed. You will have one of these in front of you throughout the whole game, and it makes it so easy to know what you're going to do on your turn. The board actually breaks down your turn for you. You can see that first of all you have the activation step, then you have your purchase step, and it shows you what you can purchase, how much it costs to purchase them, and also information regarding those units, whether they are upgradable or not, what they have in terms of their movement and combat stats. It's all very clear. There's a section down there for the upgrades. There's then information on how you can sell items, and then information on gathering your resources at the end of the turn. And the reverse of the board just has some important mechanics, little things to remind you as you are playing. And honestly, I can't say enough good things about these player boards. They make it so easy to get into the game. They make everything so clear. You are never in doubt what you can do with your different units. You have all of the information directly in front of you. And of course, part of the reason that that's possible is because it is such a streamlined design. There are only a few different units and a few different buildings you need to worry about. But even so, I have seen games from much larger companies that fail to produce reference cards that are as good as these ones are. And it really helps to heighten the feel of this game into something that feels more mainstream. And I think you can say that about a lot of the components. Some of the artwork isn't to the standard you might expect from big brand games, but everything looks really nice and the quality is there. Next up, you get 20 of the floor tiles, and these are of a suitable thickness. They are double-sided. You get 5 different designs, 4 of each, and they are numbered, so this is floor tile 4, this is number 3. The artwork has that grungy, futuristic, industrial look, so everything's grey and dark. The blue squares are areas where you can harvest resources. The red square at the top is somewhere where you can put a little passageway so that you can sneak through your opponent's defences if you have the correct resources available to you. And these are the passageway tiles. You get 10 of these. And although I am colourblind, I do like the fact that when the passages are closed on the tiles, there are little red squares, but when you place one of these tiles over the top, the squares go green. Of course, you actually see the passageway on the map, but having that green square as well is an extra way to identify that that is now an open passage. It's a nice little extra feature. And then you get 4 massive bags of cardboard standees with plastic bases. And the bases are designed to accept the unit, but also there is a slot for upgrades for the units. For example, here's your command center. You get one of these at the start of the game. If at any point it is destroyed, then it is game over for you. So one of the things you want to do is upgrade its defenses. You can see there is a slot in the front of the base. So if you can afford to purchase one, you can buy yourself a shield and you can slot that into the front of your unit there. And then if somebody attacks your base, the first time they attack, they will just destroy the shield, and they will have to attack a second time in order to destroy the base itself. So you get 4 of those command bases, 1 in each colour. You then get 12 of these are the miners. You get 3 in each colour, and those are how you will gather additional resources. There are 12 barricades, 3 in each colour. These are just walls. They're a way to prevent people from moving into areas you do not want them to go until they have been destroyed. There are 12 gun turrets, 3 in each colour. If you have seen the film Aliens, you will know what those are all about. There are 12 portals, 3 in each colour. These allow you to move your troops more rapidly around the board. There are 16 fighters, 4 in each colour. These are your basic bog standard melee troops. You get 16 of these, 4 in each colour. Look, he's got a shooter. He's basically your standard ranged unit. And then you get 16 of the mechs, 4 in each colour. And look at the artwork on these. They look fabulous. And then of course you get those upgrades. There are 32 shield tokens, so that's 8 in each colour. And then you also get 12 of the advanced miner tokens, that's 3 in each colour. And you place those on your mining units and they will gather additional resources for you. Next up, you get a big wedge of 74 mineral cards. And there are 4 different minerals in the game. You have silver, and then you have gold, you have iron, and you have the very rare uranium. So through the course of the game, you will use your mining units to draw cards from this deck. So you will get a random distribution of minerals, which you can combine in different ways to create different units and upgrades. Interestingly, some of the mineral cards have special rules on them. You can either use this as the mineral printed in the background. In this case, this is an iron card. And I do think it should have an image of the iron or the word iron printed on it, because for colorblind people, that's not going to be very obvious. But the main thing about this card is that if you don't want to use it as a mineral, you can use it to gain an advantage in a different way. In this case, you can discard the card to place a secret passage. Finally, you get a set of research cards. There are 4 of each research card because each player has the opportunity to buy each one once. And to purchase these, you spend the listed minerals and then you get a permanent benefit to your forces. Let's take a very quick look at how this game plays. The first thing you have to do is create your board. As I mentioned before, I do recommend using the layouts in the rules book, but if you do come up with your own layouts, then keep in mind how many players you have. If you have an even number of players, 2 or 4, it's a good idea to have a nice symmetrical map. For this video, I'm making a map which is just 4 squares. And as I position this last tile in place, you can see that the walls interact in interesting ways. For example, down here, you can see there's a little diagonal path. That is a path that a unit can squeeze through. Whereas up here along the top edge of this tile, you can see there is no way through at the moment, but there is one of those passageway tiles. If you can get one of those iron mineral cards that allows you to place a passageway, you can place that there and then you can sneak through. At the start of the game, you have to place your command center on one of the blue resource squares, and then each player will place a mining unit on another blue square in a different unoccupied tile. And then finally, each player will place a fighter on the same tile as their command center. And if you want to speed the game up a little bit, you can also optionally place a portal on your command center tile. That will literally just speed up the first few turns of the game and make it so that you can distribute your forces more rapidly. And then players will take it in turn to activate, and players get a certain number of activations. At the start of the game, you get 1 activation from your command center. You will get additional activations as you purchase those research cards, because each new research card gives you 1 extra activation, which means you can move 1 extra unit. When you activate a unit to begin with, they can move and attack in any order. But you can't move, attack, and then finish moving unless you purchase the silver research card, which allows your fighter units to move, attack, and then continue moving. So let's say on my turn, I want to activate my fighter. I look at my player aid, and we can see here that fighters move 5 squares and attack at range 1. So I am going to go 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. I am now adjacent to the enemy fighter. And when I attack, it is entirely deterministic. I attack, therefore I destroy my opponent. If your opponent has a shield when you attack, you remove the shield, and then that's the end of your attack. So you can see the way you position your units, the way you move and attack, it's very deterministic, and therefore it's very chess-like. There's no dice rolling, there's no randomness. If you get into a position where you can get into an attack position, you will defeat your opponent. Some people will be very, very excited about that. Some people may find it a little bit too much to think about. When the board is full of enemy units and you're playing across 20 tiles, everything's very busy, it can become a situation where you start to really think a little bit too hard about where you're going to place your units, and analysis paralysis can set in. This may be one of those games where you have to keep gently nudging your opponent to say, okay, hurry up now, just to keep the game flowing. In addition to activating your units, you can also activate your command center for free. It will get to take a shoot action. And again, we can look at our handy dandy board here, and it has all of the information for the command center. We can see that it will earn us 1 resource each turn. It will let us have 1 activation each turn. It can make a range 5 attack, and that attack is free. Also, we can upgrade it with a shield. If you have any turrets, you can also take a free attack action with your turrets, and then if you have any of those mineral cards that allow you to make special plays, you can use those too. Next, you move on to the purchase phase, where again you will look at your little reference card and you will see if there's anything that you want to buy. All of the prices are clearly labelled. Let's say I happen to have 1 gold, so I decide I'm going to purchase a shooter. If you purchase a fighter, a shooter, or a mech, it has to go on the same tile as your command center. I'll put him there. If you want to build another miner unit, a barricade, a turret, or a portal, then you can build that on any tile where you have troops, but there are no enemy troops. And finally, of course, certain units you can purchase shields for, or you can purchase upgrades for your miner units. Next is the sell phase. If there are some structures that you don't want anymore, barricades, turrets, or portals, or miners, then you can discard those from the board. For each unit you discard, you get to draw an additional mineral. This is obviously a useful thing if you're very low on minerals, but also occasionally in certain situations it can be beneficial to destroy a unit that you think your opponent is going to destroy anyway. And then the final phase of your turn is the earn phase, where you gather your resources. You will get 1 resource from your command center, you will get 1 resource from each miner, you will get 1 additional resource from each miner that has been upgraded to an advanced miner. Those cards go into your hand, your turn is over. And that's it, play continues that way until eventually someone has amassed enough resources and units in order to make a push to advance onto an enemy area and destroy their command center. last command center standing wins. So as you can see, it's very streamlined, it's very efficient in terms of what it's doing. And it has some really interesting ideas. First of all, I think it really does capture the feel of a real-time strategy game. It has that instantly recognizable structure of your command center gives you some actions and some resources. You use those actions and resources to purchase additional units that will give you actions and resources. You get upgrades. You gradually build your forces until you are strong enough to take over the whole board. But then on top of that, it layers in that deterministic combat, that very chess-like movement and positional play, which gives it a very different sort of feel. And I guess whether you like this game will depend on whether you think you would enjoy those two different types of game meshing together. Because there is randomness in the game. When you harvest your resources, you are drawing from a deck of cards, and then you have to make the best you can with what you've got. But then when it comes to the activations, everything is very deterministic, everything is very precise, you have to really think out what you're doing. And unfortunately that can slow the game down, and it can start to detract a little bit from that RTS feel, because really those games are all about making those fast, rapid decisions. And I think that's probably the main issue for me. I do play chess, I do play other games that are not just dice chuckers, but I do feel like in each turn when you get to the activation phase, the game starts to slow down a little bit. Once you've got past the activations, people are selling units and then gathering their resources. That's all very, very quick. And of course, because you've got your resources the turn before you need them, by the time it gets around to your turn again, you've already decided what you want to purchase really. But then you get back to that activation phase and everything sort of slows down again as everybody starts to go, what do I do? If I do that, I'm going to get killed next turn. If I don't do that, they're going to advance here and that's going to put me in a dangerous position. And it really becomes a lot to think about. There is also a potential issue in terms of people playing too cagily. If everybody sits back very early on in the game and just builds up their forces, gains upgrades, gains resources, eventually the game starts to run very, very long. And then when finally combats do start to happen, it becomes I take one, you take one, I take one, you take one, but I've got so many resources, I'm going to build the replacement. By the time it's my turn again, I'm back up to full force. Everybody just gets thrown into the meat grinder and it can really slow down and bog down. I think the game benefits from people playing openly and aggressively and really pressing. If you are very brave, you can very, very quickly take enemy command centers, but you have to really go for it. And of course, then the problem is you have the potential of knocking people out of the game and then they're out for the rest of the game. In my first game, there was a situation where someone made a bad move that put their command center in an exposed position and they literally could have been taken out of the game in about the third or fourth turn. But because it was a learning game, we didn't capitalize on that player's mistake. That player got to stay in the game and then actually ended up with a very strong force towards the end of the game. And really, I guess that's where I am. I think there's a lot to like here. I think the quality of the components are really good for an indie game. The resource management element is solid. The deterministic combat is very interesting. It's very well thought out. It's all very slick. It's very well engineered. And those player boards are perfect. There's no situation you're going to come across in the game that isn't explained by that board, which is just a sign of excellent design. I have a few minor grievances, like I think the minerals should actually say the name of the mineral on them as well as having the colour and the symbol, especially when the minerals are red and green, but that's a minor complaint. Overall, I want to like this more than I do, and I don't think I dislike it because it's a bad game. I think I dislike it just because it didn't work for me. Hopefully, in this video I have showcased enough of it that you can get an idea of whether it might be for you. I certainly hope it is, because it is clearly a labour of love, and there is a huge amount of game packed into this box. With the right group of players, this could be a real winner. Thank you once again to Tektite Games for sending this to the channel for review. I really do appreciate it. But that is it from me for now. Thank you so much for watching. If you've enjoyed the video, please consider pressing the like button. If you've really enjoyed the video, please consider subscribing if you don't already do so. And hopefully, I will see you all again very soon. Bye bye everyone. Bye bye.